What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another Friday night with your boys. Some live interactive sports talk going down tonight. So my co-host gonna let y'all know exactly what are we gonna be talking about tonight, and then we're gonna introduce ourselves.
As you may or may not be aware, you may have been under a rock for the last 2 days, but NBA free agency has gotten off to a supernova. We're going to be digging into a lot of that tonight. We'll also be talking a little bit about some conference realignment that's going to be happening in 2024 and
Yep.
some changes to divisions in a certain conference in 2023. So we're going to sprinkle in a little bit of other news, and we may even touch on Miles Bridges and his lean cup and his wife abuse. You never know.
Never know. But yeah, man, it's gonna be an action-packed show. It's gonna be as hot as the start of NBA free agency, so you do not want to go anywhere. Make sure y'all still stay tuned in. Interactive Sports Talk. It's your boy Stephen Box, joined as always by my co-host, one and the only the man you just heard from.
There would be this guy, Cool McCain. And just so y'all don't forget, we are the tag team champions of Interactive Sports Talk.
Interactive Sports Talk.
And
Tag
that's
team champ.
also reigning and defending tag team champions.
Undisputed. But there's another name they call us, and it's the Play Caller. Yes, sir. So cool, bro. So much to talk about. I mean, we have a whole hour show, and we're not even going to bring up the NFL outside of you just saying the word just now. That's crazy how much stuff is going on right now.
It's too many different things happening right now, y'all. I got to touch first on Miles Bridges, man. I don't know the outcomes. It's only arrest so far. There's physical evidence, but there's been no type of conviction or anything. So we're that crazy show where we like to actually get some facts and see what happens before we go too deep. But I want to say, man, that being seen with a cup of lean a few weeks ago and trying to say that it was lemonade, very funny. You definitely cost yourself a max contract. You definitely cost yourself some games if someone does sign you. And I hope if what's being said about him is true, that this gentleman goes and gets some help, um, so that he could become a better husband, better guy, a better man, a better boyfriend, whatever their situation is, and turns this into a positive. Because right now, it's not looking good for you, Miles Bridges. I mean, it's just not.
Yeah, I mean, man, like you said, bro, we do this crazy thing where we actually sit and we wait for facts to come out, and we don't just jump to conclusions on stuff. But yeah, I mean, obviously with the start of free agency, with some of the contracts that are being handed out, there's no doubt he just cost himself a really big chunk of money at the very least, and possibly a lot more than that. And I mean, honestly, bro, like there's no excuse for it, man. Like if you are in a relationship, and fellas, I'm just gonna tell you, listen to what I'm about to say right now, y'all. If you were in a relationship where you feel that this woman is going to actually make you get to a point where you become abusive, you need to leave that relationship. Okay. Like, cause I see some dudes that be like, she be hitting me, she be doing this, she be tripping, she be in can't even talk right now. But basically instigating it. And I'm like, bro, if that's the case, get about. Don't stay in those relationships, fellas. We have got to do better as men. Straight up.
Very true. Very true. Very true. Uh, so there's just so many of these NBA contracts and signings to get into. But before we do that, me and you're both fans
I
of the
think Kimmy
Atlantic
just happened while you were talking, by the way.
Coast Conference, at least 15. The Atlantic Coast Conference is going to do something very interesting in football, starting in the 2023 season. So, not this coming season, but the following season. They're going to essentially go back to the model that they had during COVID, where there's no leagues.
Right.
You're just playing, teams. So, you're going to have four teams that you play every year. And then, excuse me, you're going to have three teams that you play every year that are your consistent rivals. And then you'll
Right.
rotate through everybody else in 3 years. Theoretically, this gives everyone a chance to play every team uh, during their college career. That's what the ACC is putting out. I don't have a problem with it because there's one very strong division in the ACC and there's one very weak one. So if we're going to combine them together, then that just means that some of the guys from that weak side, and I, as a Miami fan, acknowledge that I'm one of those weak teams. This is going to be a chance for everyone to play. Obviously, I think Miami and Florida State are still going to play every year. I think that's pretty logical and obvious. But I think this gives a chance, like they said, for everybody to rotate through. You get those games against Clemson, you get those games against Florida State, Virginia Tech, you get those games against everybody within a 3 year span. So
Yep.
I think that is good. That does make sense. I'm curious to see if other conferences are going to do something similar. I know one that I bet will not, and that's the SEC. But that's another story for another day. But just thought it was very interesting that they're thinking about ways to try to improve the quality of the teams that are going to be in the ACC championship, and they have an opportunity to possibly go play for a college national championship. So kudos to the ACC for recognizing something had to be done because it did.
Yeah, I will confirm that because I actually saw the article on a Florida State site about the change, and it did mention in there actually Miami, Clemson, and Syracuse, I believe was the third team, will be our three permanents. So that's great that the Florida State Miami rivalry gets to continue and be a yearly event. Uh, Very smart move. And then, Florida State and Clemson have been kind of the two top dogs in the conference, kind of back and forth for a while. Both were down last year, but if you go back over the last 10 years, so it's good to be able to see that that rivalry is also going to continue on a yearly basis. When I look at this decision overall, man, I agree with you that it's really a smart decision. If for no other reason, then you're taking all this nonsense about having to worry if one side is good, one side's bad, or whatever the case is, and you're just saying the two top teams go to the championship in the discussion. It doesn't matter. I mean, how many years, and I'm not saying it's just to like, you know, promote my team here, but like realistically, how many years was Florida State and Clemson easily the top two teams in the ACC, but only one of them could go to the championship game? And so you already knew that whichever one it was, already was going to win the championship. There was no drama to the ACC championship game. It's been a foregone conclusion pretty much every year. And last year it wasn't really a foregone conclusion, but nobody cared about it because it was two teams nobody cared about. So I love the fact they're going to this. I think it's going to make the ACC championship game actually mean something.
Well, I mean, as a team that was on the other side, it does. There's a group of people that's going to be upset because now certain teams will not get the chance to make it there. But I'll simply say to those teams who are upset, step your game up.
Be
Miami,
better.
you won them. Step your game up. You should have been got better. I've got a better coach in some of those teams, and some of them. After this happens, I think we're going to have a lot more turnover. Complacent coaches who haven't really won anything, they're going to have to get up out of there and bring in coaches and players that want to win. So
So
that should be a win for the conference as a whole.
does that turnover come with a chain?
If they want, man. At the end of the day, man, win or lose, right or wrong, championship game or not, it's still all about the you. That's just how it goes. No one else really matters. Other teams
Intentionally,
exist because we need to play somebody.
intentionally, put on my floor say heavily tonight, man. So
I hadn't have to do that because we already know it's all about you.
But that's not
That's a
the
given.
only thing. Look, but that's not the only news going on in college football. Got a little
It
bit of
is
a
not.
bombshell dropped on us the other day.
Yes, we did.
What do
We
you think
had.
about that? What do you think about that, man?
So I'm of the opinion that USC and UCLA are brilliant for making this move. The Big Ten is very smart for facilitating this move. The Pac-12 is going to die. I'm sorry, unless they're going to go and get lower tier teams. The Pac-12 is not going to be a Power Five conference. So being smart enough to say USC and UCLA are saying, you know what, we're getting up out of here, and we're giving you 2 years, but we're getting up out of here, and they're moving to another conference. So you have people say, "Oh, it's crazy that they're going to be cross country, and conferences used to be regional, and blah blah blah." Understand this one thing. If you have that opinion, understand one simple thing: super conferences are coming. We've been saying for years, super conferences are coming.
Yep.
Texas and Oklahoma were supposed to be the beginning, but they just got usurped by USC, UCLA because they're going to be moving sooner. Because they were able to negotiate themselves leaving earlier because they used intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing is, man, it's going to be exciting for basketball and for football, especially for basketball, because you think about if you're UCLA and USC, the only time you get to stay at home for conference games is going to be playing each other. You're going to have to travel all the way across the country, and everybody when they come to play you, they got to travel across the country. So it begs to wonder about travel. And who else the Big Ten might say, well, we might as well connect it since we've already got two teams out west. We might want to connect it by grabbing some teams in the Midwest. So it makes sense to have this whole connection of the Big Ten being all the way across. We'll see if more comes to happen, but it's an interesting start. I did not see it happening, but I think it's a brilliant move as well. Shake stuff up, man. We've been saying the same crap for years, and it's getting old and stale. Let's do it.
Yeah, and one point I'm gonna make that I intentionally did not make earlier because I wanted to wait till we had this conversation about the Big Ten. The ACC made the move they did in part because they know what's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And what they wanted to do is they wanted to basically say, hey, if you're one of the top two teams in the ACC, you're going to play for the championship regardless. There is no more you get left out in the cold if you and the other best team are on the same side. All that's gone. You know why? Because the ACC knows they have to do everything they can to make sure they keep their top dogs. Because, hey,
And
you don't
super
think,
conferences are coming.
yeah, because look, you don't think the SEC, the Big Ten, or the Pac 12 is coming knocking on Clemson and Florida State door? You don't think that if Miami continues to build a program up, they're not knocking on Miami's door? Of course they are.
They're knocking on Miami's door right now already, too.
Yeah.
Matter of fact, because it's the program. It may not be
Yeah.
successful at the time, but it's the program. You want
Yeah.
cornerstone programs. Miami's a cornerstone for college football. They haven't been
Yep.
performing well, but still a cornerstone. You don't use that
So,
if you don't play well. It's crazy, but you don't.
yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I just want to give you full credit. I just wanted to,
Sir, I am here to acknowledge us. I don't need a Seminole to acknowledge us. We acknowledge ourselves.
we definitely know y'all acknowledge yourselves.
But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, as this banter can go on for a while, it is time for us to enter the NBA free agency. This is a
Shoot it.
dark and crazy place where you shoot the J, shoot it.
Shoot
And
it.
apparently they get you paid a lot of money too. There's so many different places that we can start, but there's two things that we have to start with. We have to, there is no other entrance point. Number one, James Harden's declining his deal, allowing the 76ers to sign some people. And then whatever flexibility that they have in Philadelphia is going to resign. Kevin Durant has demanded a trade. Kyrie Irving's opted in, but it doesn't feel like he's going to stay, but he wanted to get that paper.
Right.
So those are a couple of the early things. My opinions on him. This is the first thing I can say about James Harden where I can say it seems like he's actually trying to put the team first.
Yeah.
Now, don't get me wrong. James Harden's not taking 10, 15 million to play. So don't try to spread that. But he is allowing the organization to go out and try to get pieces. And one of those pieces was overpaying PJ Tucker by quite a bit of money. Because I know I saw this and I had to look at it like 5 or 6 times because I wanted to make sure that what I was seeing was correct. So PJ Tucker,
Correct.
and let's preface it by saying this: in a game of any sort that's not digital, PJ Tucker would wipe the floor with me and my co-host 2-on-1.
Hmm.
So let's go ahead and preface it by saying this. But to pay PJ Tucker $33.2 million over 3 years, fully guaranteed, a 37-year-old player. This is the type of thing that you look back on and you say, man, that's crazy. And I'm gonna give you an example. Kentavious Caldwell Pope is now a Nugget through a low end trade that did not cost us a lot. Really, he does the same thing. He's a little less physical than PJ Tucker, but 3 and D, he's better at the three. He does play good wing defense. He's not that good against post guys, but let's be honest, PJ Tucker is kind of in between. He can play a little bit of both, but he's not great at guarding either one. There's
Yeah.
other options out there that you could have went after. So Philadelphia, this is the type of overpayment that could burn you. It could work out well. He could bring a toughness that your team definitely has not had ever, that I remember since AI's days. But
Mhm.
we will see if that works out. What I will say about it is, at least Harden is trying to work with the team.
Yeah.
KD, I don't know why everybody's surprised. You got these people running around talking about, oh, KD, he's soft, he's this, he's that. No, KD, excuse me, is a businessman.
Right.
He came to Boston, to Brooklyn to win championships. Guess what happened? They didn't win championships. Teams break it apart. Harden's gone. Kyrie's over here wilding out. So he's like, you know what, man? I'm done with this. His legacy is going to be defined by championships. He knows that. Everyone else knows that.
Right.
The only problem I have with KD is you're the same guy who got on LeBron so bad when he was switching teams to win championships back in the day. You're now doing the same exact thing. I don't mind you
Hmm.
because game recognized game. You got to go to a team that's built. But I want KD to think about one thing. And if he's one of his burner accounts is my friend on Twitter, I'm gonna get a nasty message later. But KD, where are you going to go and still keep the star player? Think about it. You want to go to Phoenix. Who do you think is going to be included in the trade for you? Devin Booker. Phoenix is not going to. Brooklyn's not going to make that deal if they're not getting back Devin Booker. So a lot of places you're naming the guys you want to play with, you're still not going to play with because they're going to have to be part of a package to get you. Homerism at its finest. Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, couple of first round picks. Let's get him in Denver.
Do did you see the I'm going to say the report on what his expectations were for Miami? Come on,
I'll let
some
you tell us about it.
he only wants to go to Miami, assuming that they can basically keep Bam, Kyle Lowry, and Jimmy Butler. I'm like, if they keep all three of them, what they gonna send back? Like, here's the thing, man. I understand the NBA is a players' league, right? Like we've talked about this. Players can basically negotiate whatever they want. They can sign long-term contracts, they enforce their way out. They can dictate where they're gonna go by telling other teams they're not gonna sign there. They have all these things that players do in the NBA that no other sport has the luxury of being able to pull off. And it's gone to their heads, man, because now they just talking crazy. Now they just expect the teams are just gonna let them go for like absolutely nothing and go play somewhere with like 8 other freaking all stars. It doesn't work, man. Like it's like, bro, I thought maybe with Milwaukee winning last year, I thought maybe even a Golden State, a team that really, did it with a core that they drafted and that they've actually built up over time. That maybe we were actually heading in a direction where teams started going, you know what? We can actually build this thing up. We don't just have to go out and buy all of our players. And I'm not necessarily opposed to people going and buying players, right? Because I mean, that's what my Lakers have always done. But at the same time, it's like I thought we were maybe kind of moving back in a direction where you didn't have everybody trying to do that. But no, no, apparently not. At least KD hasn't got the memo if that's what's going on.
So yeah, there is another trade. There are several trades to discuss, but there's a trade that hasn't happened too long ago that we have to discuss. So Rudy Gobert, or as I like to call him, Rudy Gobert, was traded to the Minnesota Timberwolves. And I want you guys to pay attention. I want you to listen. And this is all one trade, just to be clear.
One trade.
Milwaukee, I mean, I said Milwaukee, Minnesota has sent Malik Beasley, Patrick Beverly, Jared Vanderbilt, Leandro Balmaro, and Walker Kessler. Out of those players, Malik Beasley and Walker Kessler are the only ones that could possibly really be a lot. Vanderbilt, he'd be a decent depth piece. And 4 first round picks. Listen to me. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, not only did they send picks, but the picks in 2023, 2025, and 2027 are unprotected. So if Minnesota stinks, Utah can have a top pick. The 2029 pick is top 5 protected. So a pick that's going to be 7 years from now is top 5 protected. The other 3 picks are unprotected. The Jazz now have 6 first round picks in a 24-hour span. So they are definitely looking to retool this team. And this tells me that they picked Donovan Mitchell over Rudy Gobert.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I'll say is Minnesota, I think, was smart in making the move. I don't know if I'd give up this much for it, especially his contract. And then you put in Karl Anthony Towns' new max deal in the books as well. But at the end of the day, if you want to win, if you want to do better than you did, going to play defense, Rudy Gobert is going to rebound. Oh, yeah.
I can't hear you, bro. You cut out. I could hear you for a second, and then you cut out, and you came back, and now you're gone again. So yeah, so while you're trying to get your audio back on, I'll just kind of give you my thoughts on the Rudy Gobert thing here. I mean, obviously, this is a ridiculous trade. They gave up way too much, in my opinion. But I'm going to compare this to another deal, right? Another trade that we're going to talk about, and that is what the Atlanta Hawks pulled off. So you look at what they got, from Murray, right? What they gave up. I'd have to pull up the exact pace because I don't remember off the top of my head what it was, but I think they gave up like maybe like 2 first compared to 5 first. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, I understand Rudy Gobert has, a couple more all-star appearances and things like that. But at the end of the day, you're talking about a huge difference in what you gave up. And I don't really feel like the difference between the two guys in terms of what they're going to be able to bring to your team is dramatically different. And Gobert was a guy that was heavily rumored to be on his way to Atlanta. That was somebody that people kept talking about, talking about, talking about, and then it never actually materialized. So, we'll talk a little bit more about that Atlanta trade here in a little bit. So I'm not going to go into depth about it right now. But I just wanted to kind of highlight that particular trade. And looks like my co-host had to log out, so he'll hopefully be joining us back here in just a second. So looks like he's just got some audio issues going on. So yeah, we'll be back with that here in just a minute. One thing that I'm going to be interested to see what his thoughts are here is this Zion Williamson signing too, man. Because that's one that I feel bad for the Pelicans. I really do. They I feel like they had to make this move, right? I mean, they had to. They couldn't not make this move. You couldn't go and draft this dude and then just give up on it. Because if he goes somewhere else, if you don't resign him and he goes somewhere else and actually stays healthy and becomes a star, you are never going to hear the end of it. But on the other end of the spectrum, if this is a move that you make and he continues to not be healthy, oh my goodness. This is going to blow up so badly in their face. Are you back with us, man? Nope, still can't hear you, bro. You might want to grab a different mic or something. So yeah, so for those of you who might not have seen the news yet, the Zion Williamson deal, they gave him a max deal. He is now potentially going to be the third highest paid player in league history, which is pretty ridiculous for a guy who hasn't really been able to stay healthy. Now, I don't deny it. If he stays healthy, he's absolutely worth a max deal. I mean, the numbers he puts up have been absolutely insane. The problem is he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Now, they do have some caveats in there. I think he has to meet a couple of milestones in order to get the entire, I think it's like 231 million or something like that. But if he doesn't meet all the incentives, I think it's like 191 million or something like that. But either way, man, it's still a ridiculous amount of money to have to pay for a dude who has not been able to stay on the floor. So we're gonna see what ends up happening with that, but that is what's going on. And apparently my co-host is still having some problems. So we will go back to the solo layout here. And hopefully he'll be able to get on back on with us here shortly and get those issues pulled up. So give me a second here. So I'm actually kind of pulling up what all trades we actually have because unfortunately, it's live and he has all the notes for who we're covering tonight. So let's see. Are you back, man? No, still can't hear you, bro. Nope. I don't know if you can hear me, but I cannot hear you. Don't know what's going on with your audio. It's you might want to check your mic settings. Make sure you got the right mic set or something. Make sure that something ain't come unplugged. So yeah, um, Portland's gonna be an interesting one, man. Dame is obviously a guy that they're hoping is gonna resign, but there's no guarantees of that. So we're gonna see what happens with Dame. Let me just go ahead and just pull these some of these deals up just so I can go through. So the Zion deal is 231 million max. Is actually his deal, and it's 192.9 million over 5 years is more or less the guaranteed portion of that. So basically 193 million with a possibility of going up to 231. I don't know. Y'all tell me what you think in the chat. Like, do you think that that was a smart deal for the Pelicans to make? I mean, did they even have a choice? Honestly. So I'm be curious to see what my co-host thoughts are on that as well. Just kind of running through some of the other ones. Ricky Rubio going to come back to the Cavs on a 3-year deal. I think that's a good deal for them. He had the ACL injury last year and didn't really get to do much. But it's a 3-year, $18.4 million deal. So not a lot of money, especially in NBA today. You see what some of these guys are getting paid. It's actually a pretty decent deal for them. So
All
think
right.
I think that was a smart move. Mitchell Robinson staying with the Knicks. They're paying him 60 mil. So that's a 4-year deal. Yeah, I mean, it's okay. I feel like it's not a terrible deal for the amount of money you're paying him, but I mean, the Knicks are just like to me, even with getting Jalen Brunson, which is another deal we'll talk about here in a second, is I don't see them as being an upper echelon team right now. I don't see them as a team who is posed to go and threaten to represent the Eastern Conference in the NBA Finals right now. And so you're spending this money on guys that aren't necessarily elevating your team the way that you're hoping they will. You made all these cap cuts, did all this stuff to make this room to go bring Jalen Brunson in on a what was that 4-year, $110 million deal. I mean, is that dude really going to take you to the NBA Finals? And maybe he has it in to have a Kyle Lowry like growth, but I'm not seeing it personally. Are you back with us, man? Still can't hear you, bro. I think it's something. I don't think it's with your internet, man. I think it's your mic. Make sure it's something. Maybe something came unplugged because I thought I heard a little noise right before you went out. So maybe something got pulled loose. Yeah, Zach Levine, man, 5 years, 215 million. I don't know that he's worth it. He's not, in my opinion, a max player. But here's the thing: you didn't really have a choice. You pretty much had to go and make this move because you don't really have a lot of pieces around him right now. It's kind of the problem. You got DeRozan, who is what 33. I think he's turning 33 this year, and he's got what maybe a couple years left of really high production. I mean, guys are playing a little bit longer these days, but even still, you can't count on maybe more than another couple years of high production for him. And you needed somebody who can still produce at a pretty high level after that. Or if you're hoping to extend DeRozan's career out at all, you need somebody else to be able to take some of that weight off of his shoulders and continue to carry that. So you pretty much had no choice but to pay this contract, whether he is worth it or not. But I mean, at the end of the day, man, even though I don't necessarily think he was worth it, I think he got overpaid a little bit here. I think it was a move they had to make, and it was a smart move for them to make. I mean, because it is what it is. I mean, that's the price of doing business in the NBA today. Let's see, we got Nurk stayed with Portland, 4-year, $70 million deal. I mean, honestly, for you know for what he brings to that team at that price, that's actually a pretty good deal, considering what we were just talking about with what New York just paid for a center. So, are you back, sir?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, sir.
All right.
So I don't know if you've been able to hear me or not. I was just kind of running through some of the deals. Figure we'll dive into them a little bit deeper after you get back. But I was just kind of running through some of them
So I
since
did
you
hear
had the
one that.
agenda in front of you.
So I did want to talk about Zion Williamson.
Yes, I did talk a little bit about that one, but I would love to hear your thoughts, sir.
You paid a lot of money for an individual that is should be called street clothes Williamson as well, because he's done really nothing on the court but like one season. Really great season. Don't get me wrong. He was a really good player when he played.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I believe in 100% is the best ability is availability. Now, you had no choice in the matter. People say New Orleans is stupid for making a trade, they're crazy or whatever. What did you expect them to do?
Yeah.
My question would be, what was your expectation? because quite simply, that's Zion Williamson.
Mhm.
Several teams will offer him money, but you had the option to offer him more, so you did.
Yeah.
I don't see anything wrong with what they did. I think it was very intelligent. It was forthright because you're signing your future. You're saying, this is my guy moving forward. Let's get him in the door. Let's get him right now. That's what you have to do in today's NBA. A lot of these guys are getting paid off of what you expect them to become, not what they are. Zion's no different.
Yeah.
Now, again, the one thing about him, you have to be healthy. The way that Zion can get healthy, you got to get rid of some of that weight.
Yep.
You got to grind. You got to retool that body to handle an NBA season. And if he plays like he should and gets healthy, no one's going to say anything about this deal in 2 years, period. I like the Brunson deal to the Knicks. I heard you speak on that one as well.
Yeah.
The
Yeah,
Spurs
I like the deal.
deal.
I just don't know that, I just don't know that it necessarily elevates him. But I do like the signing itself.
Well, you have to think this too. The Knicks needed a point guard. The Knicks needed a point guard probably worse than any but except one or two teams in the NBA. They were one of the top 5 teams that had to go out and get an effective point guard this offseason. Getting a guy that you can sign for 4 years, $100 million, when people are signing for 4 years, $250 million. I mean, it's not necessarily a bargain, but I think 25 million a year for Jalen Brunson is not bad. It elevates him. I said during the season last year, this dude is going to go be a starter somewhere next year. He's not going to continue to back up Luka Doncic in an offense where you got a point guard who's really a small forward.
Right.
So he's now got the opportunity to be the guy at a team that needs him to be the guy. I think he makes them somewhat better just because of what he's able to do. Yeah, I see the Dante DiVincenzo. DiVincenzo hasn't been the same since he was injured for Milwaukee. So this may be a wise move. Just him getting another fresh start and seeing if he can, kind of get back to what he used to be before the injury. And it kind of normally takes you about a year after the injury, so he's kind of on track to maybe have a good season this year. Now, notice the Golden State. I don't know if you spoke about this at all. They had a couple of guys that they lost.
And that's how
And yeah, so they had a couple of guys that they lost that they weren't starters, but I think that they were important pieces to what they were doing.
Oh yeah.
I think using Gary Payton II was going to happen. Like there was no way you were going to keep that entire team together. But if you're losing those guys, Juan Toscano Anderson, you know what I'm saying? Gary Payton II, if those are the guys that you're losing off the team, no disrespect to their game, because again, both of them would drag me all across the basketball court. You're doing fine. You're not in a position where you're concerned about what's happening. Portland's actually having a pretty good offseason. Nurkic re-signed. They got Anthony Simmons, who's going to be a young guy that I think they feel like they can build around.
Right.
I believe that's where Gary Payton II went to, right? If I remember correctly.
I believe so.
Yeah, so that's
And
a pretty good, solid team they're trying to build, and it looks like one of those if, and it's a big if Damian Lillard wants to stay, we're putting some people around him where he can't just sit here and look like, oh, we're not doing anything to help the team get better. But at the
yeah.
same time, if he leaves, they have other guys.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I did mention earlier that, it's no guarantee that Damian Lillard's coming back, right? I mean, Dame could very easily say, you know what, I really don't want to be here anymore. And I don't necessarily think, even with the moves they're making right now, I don't think anybody would actually blame him for that. But I do feel like they've actually made some really good moves and trying to put some pieces around him. But, at the same time, if I'm Dame, I'm looking at this roster and I'm thinking, even with the pieces you put around, we're not competing in the Western Conference. I mean, just
Yeah,
being real about it.
Kevon Looney got him a nice little payday too from Golden State. Proved his worth. I thought he was a guy that was actually going to end up leaving because I thought somebody was going to offer him a little bit more, but either it didn't come or he decided to stay with the champs. I don't think it's a bad move for him either way. You may have talked about this as well, but Zach LaVine did decide to stay with Chicago and got that big payday. And I believe they signed a center too. Trying to remember his name, Drummond.
Yeah.
So they got Drummond too. Um, Chicago's a team that's going to be a problem next year. They get Lonzo Ball back healthy, they're going to be a problem. Anybody who doesn't see that, I mean, I don't know what to tell you, but it's going to be a problem. Rubio went back to Cleveland.
Yeah.
Makes all the sense in the world because
Yeah.
Ricky Rubio made that team go.
And the deal it's only like 6 million a year. I mean, I know he's come off the ACL, but that's actually a really good value for him for what he brings to that team.
Yeah. And they only played 34 games before he tore it. So it may be something that he could be back, sometime during the season. I won't say like 34 games in or near the beginning, but maybe sometime this season.
Yeah.
And then Otto Porter left and went to Toronto. So Golden State lost him. I think that may be the bigger loss of the people that they lost.
Yeah.
That's another big one. I'm excited about a move I saw a little earlier, about 7 hours ago. Scrolling down my Nuggets timeline, looking at my Nuggets stuff, and I see that Bruce Brown is headed to Denver.
Mm-hmm.
2-year deal, around 13 million, a little bit over 13. And he has a player option for his second year, so that makes sense.
Right.
Bruce Brown. So, obviously, if you've watched basketball, and not saying like I watch more than anybody else, but you see a lot of Brooklyn just because they had KD and Kyrie.
Yep.
And at the beginning of the season, when they made these schedules, they had Harden as well.
Mm-hmm.
Bruce Brown was a guy that just attacked north-south, defense east-west. He's dog guarding people. He's not a guy that you expect to be a starter, but he replaces some of what you lost with Monte Morris and Will Barton, guys that we had to trade to, get Kentavious Caldwell Pope and Amir Smith.
Yeah.
I mean, Ish Smith, excuse me, not Amir, but Ish Smith. So bringing in a guy like Bruce Brown, who kind of does some of those things that both of those guys do in one person,
mm-hmm.
which means one salary, one position on the bench, one guy that needs to come in to play beside a guy like Nyshawn Bones Highland, who got better as the year went on last year. This makes a lot of sense. It's good for him to be able, if he's not happy with the role, to roll out after year one. And, I think if everyone else is playing so well that he's not getting the minutes that he wants, I'm fine with you rolling out after year one. But I do like the pickup for Denver. And when you can get quality depth pieces on your bench that could be borderline starters in some places for what we're paying, I mean, come on. That's a win-win. Definitely a win.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, man, I feel like, y'all are one of those teams that's making sneaky moves, right? Like, people aren't really going to pay attention to a lot of the moves Denver are making because they're very small moves. But you have to actually sit there and think about the fact you're getting Murray back, right? And we know how huge he was for you before the injury. So, that move is just as big as a lot of these free agent signings that people are making, you getting him back. You already
And don't
have a
forget,
two-time reigning defending MVP of the league on the team.
don't forget
And what
Michael
you're
Porter
doing,
Jr. should be back too.
yeah. So, I mean, you've got, good pieces already in place, and now you're adding solid pieces around them. You're adding depth to your roster. So yeah, I mean, I think y'all are going to be a force to be reckoned with next year.
I'm ready for it. I'm ready. Been ready for years. Um, Another big move that I kind of like is the Celtics acquiring Malcolm Brogdon,
Like a
because
bag of chips.
what we saw from the Celtics in the finals was they had no ability whatsoever to guard Klay Thompson and Steph Curry.
Yeah.
They have two young guys who should have been better defensively, but they couldn't handle them. So now you bring in a guy like Brogdon, who is actually a point guard.
Right.
Very important thing, because the guys that Boston had last year, none of them really struck me as a real starting point guard.
Mm-hmm.
And as we talked about, There were a handful of teams that really needed a point guard, and Boston was one of them. Boston, to me, was the team that needed a point guard the most.
Yeah.
And I'll say that because they had everything else. They only had to give up Daniel Theis, Aaron Naismith, and a 2023 first round pick to get Malcolm Brogdon.
Hmm.
Daniel Theis is a guy they might miss a little bit. Aaron Naismith, I don't even remember seeing him in the playoffs, so I don't think he would be missed that much. Again, no dash to him. He dogs me in basketball any day.
Right.
But in a 2020 first round pick, Celtics are a young team. They can afford to go a season without a first round pick. So I think good trade for both teams. The Pacers needed Brogdon gone. Now he's gone. They did get some value back for him. Uh, Boston didn't have to give up the form to get him. He can fit in nicely if they decide to keep Jaylen Brown and the rest of the pieces together. We know who they're keeping, so we're not even going to mention his name. We know he's staying. We don't even talk about him. But we'll just call him Little Kobe because he wants to be Baby Kobe so bad. But I think the Celtics, that's a good move for them. That's filling definitely a need. You just have to look at, what you need, what's out there. I mean, there are so many freaking deals. Derrick Jones Jr. is staying in Chicago. Another guy, good defensive piece. He's not going to give you too much on a daily basis offensively, but he can't have those moments.
Hmm.
Man, I was watching one of them and I thought it was so funny because they were talking about some dude named Luke Cornett.
Hmm.
And my first thought was, Luke Cornett? Who is Luke Cornett? It doesn't matter who's Luke Cornett. That's just all I thought.
I'm supposed to be impressed because you beat some jabroni named Luke Arnett.
That was the second thing that came to my mind, to be completely honest.
Oh man, yeah. A lot of big moves, man. A lot of really moves that made sense. But I think also what we saw was a lot of these deals were like moves that people had to overpay a little bit, but they were moves you had to make, right? Like Zion is a good example of that. Zach Levine's another guy I mentioned earlier. I think he's a little overpaid for. I don't truly see him as a max player, but with DeRozan turning 33 this year, you had no choice. You had to resign him and keep him around for a while. So, that's really to me the big thing about looking at this free agency period is we're seeing guys who don't necessarily deserve max deals get max deals because you have no choice but to pay. And somehow the NBA players manage to make it to where, unlike the NFL, where you're actually kind of slotting guys against each other and deciding who's better, that doesn't exist in the NBA. It's either you get a max deal or you don't. There's no in between.
It really feels that way. It really feels like you either get the bread or you don't. Like it don't even matter uh, in the NBA. Now I will say this: um, Bradley Beal, very smart for what he did for himself. Let me opt out and get that max contract. John Morant's max deal was on like 190, but you got to remember a lot of things go into that max deal with you can play the player.
Yeah.
So that's a bit of it. I think, of course, I'm all in for Jokic getting the max. That's should have gone without saying, but I just wanted to go ahead and make sure people knew.
And we also
When you're
we didn't talk about this move yet, but another member of team Street Clothes, John Wall, joined the Clippers.
yeah, John Wall, I think honestly he should have a good season. I mean, he played like 40 games in the past 3 years. You know what I'm saying? He should be ready to go.
I mean,
That's really all I can say about John Wall. Like I don't have any negative to say because he hadn't played enough.
he should be
I
good
don't
when
have
he's on the
anything
floor.
positive
Yeah. He should
because
be good when
he
he's on
he
the
hadn't
floor.
played enough.
Yeah, I'll just
Yeah,
leave it.
if he can play, he should be good. Oh, another good signing was the Knicks re-signing Mitchell Robinson, their center. I like him. He's an energy guy, plays hard. Um, he's going to do a lot for that team in the hustle department, in the glue department, um, and that's where they needed the help at the most. and he was there last year. But I think, like I said, getting that point guard, because the thing is, he's not a guy that's going to create a lot of shots for himself. But Jalen Brunson, a guy, NBA brain, father played basketball in the NBA as well. So he's a kid that grew up understanding the game of basketball. He's a point guard. He's a little bit undersized, no doubt about that, but game recognized game, and he can ball.
Now, I will say this about the Knicks because I mean earlier, I was saying I understand why they made the move. I'm not necessarily mad about the move itself. This is a team I haven't seen them get dramatically better. Right? So the real question for New York is this in my mind. There's two things that you need to happen this season. Number one, last year teams adjusted to Julius Randle and the success he had the previous year. If you're Julius Randle, I hope you've been putting in your time. I hope you've been in the film room. I hope you've been in the gym working and you've been figuring out how to improve your game to adapt back to what people did to you. The second question you got to ask yourself if you're New York is bringing in Brunson going to help further unlock Julius Randle? Because you absolutely need Julius Randle to play at the level he played at 2 years ago if you have any hope of actually being competitive if you're the Knicks.
Well, that's definitely a true statement. Completely 100%. He's got to be better. So there's one particular player that is unsigned that is very interesting to me. Okay. And there's one that people are probably surprised that he's still unsigned. These are two different people. Okay. Who I'm interested in is Colin Sexton. I like Colin Sexton's game, and I think that he's going to get a big contract somewhere. I don't think it's going to be Cleveland just because clutter of guards. And then a guy that I feel like a lot of people thought would be signed by now, but he hasn't been, is DeAndre Ayton. We talked about the Rudy Gobert deal earlier, right? You gave up all that to get Rudy Gobert and that contract. When you could have just signed DeAndre Ayton, younger, better offensively, and you would have had all of your assets.
Good point.
So it begs the question of how do people really feel about DeAndre Ayton around the league?
Apparently,
there's a lot of contracts that's been given out.
Ayton thinks.
There's a lot of centers that got signed. Yusuf Nurkic, Mo Bamba ended up flirting with someone else trying to get more money, and they was like, "Nah, you can go ahead and stay where you're at. We're not doing that." So he's back with Orlando. I'm just looking through centers that have already been signed. Isaiah Hartenstein already got a contract. Kevon Looney. Obviously the dollars are different, but I'm just saying Chris Boucher, JaVale McGee. Like, there's a lot of centers that have gotten deals. Dwayne Dedman, Damian Jones. You got a lot of guys that are getting money that play center. And you still got this dude sitting out here waiting on those funds.
And
so maybe
I'm picking up no picks for it, like you said.
Yeah. Andre Drummond, Bo signed. So just, Drew Eubanks, guys we don't even know. Robin Lopez. We got a lot of guys that got assigned to deals, and you're still sitting up here. No deal.
It's almost as if, well, I'll tell you, honestly, it's almost as if people watch the Western Conference Finals.
Or the NBA Finals last year. Or the Western Conference Finals last year. Or the regular season, for that matter. I think it's funny how we rank these guys, man. And it's not just him. He just happens to be the one I'm pointed out on. I think it's funny how we rank these guys and people talk about how, he's the top 5 or in the top 5 free agent signings. But it doesn't feel that way. It definitely doesn't feel that way.
It doesn't seem as though the league agrees with the media.
You mean to tell me? You just mean to tell me that the media is attempting to placate a market for a player that no one wants for the price tag that he thinks he deserves? Because remember, he wanted a max deal from Phoenix. And Phoenix hit him with a, nah, bro, we good. We can go on without you. We good. And that's what they did. But like I said, there's been a lot of these guys that have signed. Kyle Anderson, He's not a center, but he's a guy that plays, that power forward position that could be a stretch center in a small ball lineup. He normally plays like small forward, power forward, but I've seen him play some center when he was with Memphis. He's going to Minnesota as well. So Minnesota's restocking. But you
Yeah.
didn't want DeAndre Ayton for nothing but the money. That's
Yeah.
interesting. That's very interesting. And that's something we should be watching. We should be watching the guys who are supposed to be top tier free agents who are still there. I haven't heard my co-host say anything about his Lakers. I'm curious if he feels good about any of their pickups.
Well, man, we really haven't done a whole lot. Obviously, the rumor mill is twirling on a Kyrie Irving, and I've told you offline. If we ended up sending Westbrook out and having Kyrie instead, I'm cool with that. He's obviously a better fit alongside Anthony Davis and LeBron, anyways. So I would be cool with that swap out. But when you look at some of the moves we've made, they're not names that are going to get anybody's attention. But going after like a Damian Jones or uh Wantascano Anderson or Lonnie
Lonnie Walker.
Walker,
Hmm.
like these aren't big names, but these are all guys who can come in. They give you a lot defensively. They might give you a little bit offensively, but it gives this team something that they were desperately needing last year. Some
Youth.
youth.
Yeah, y'all
Some
also signed
guys.
Troy Brown too.
Oh yeah, and Troy Brown too. Yeah, Troy Brown
Yeah, I
too.
don't know if you saw that, but I just happened to
Yeah,
come across that.
yeah. And then that's not even getting into you drafted Max Christie. You also got Scottie Pippen Jr. as a free agent after the draft, which I mean, that's not a name that's going to necessarily like pop to a lot of people, but he's actually a pretty good defender. So guy who can come in and be a specialist for you. Cole Swinder is another guy they brought in. So these are not, like I said, they're not big names. They're not the kind of the splash moves that we're used to the Lakers making. They're not going to make headlines, but I think they were all solid pickups. Now, I still think that unless our new coach has found some way to magically get our big three to play together better, none of that's going to make a difference. So that's really for me where the question mark comes in. So
But man, you
do I
didn't
like the
talk
moves?
about
Yes. Am I excited? No.
you didn't you didn't talk about the best move of the offseason for you guys so far.
Oh, I had the best move for the offseason, but I don't know if it's the same one you thinking.
What do you mean, man? You signed Baby Shaq, Sharif
Well,
O'Neal.
no, 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 no. He's not on the actual roster right now. He's not
But you did
technically.
sign him.
He's not technically
You
signed.
signed
He's
him.
he's he's in the G League
But you
now.
signed him.
Now, I'm gonna tell you the big move. Okay,
Two-way contract.
I'm gonna tell you the big move. The big move for the Lakers. The game changer. You know what else happened this offseason for the Lakers, sir?
Anthony Davis got robotic legs, bionic knees, and ankles.
Even better. Luol Deng's finally off our books.
Oh man, I knew this way you was gonna go, man. But I had to let you do it, bro. I gotta say, man, that's one of the most interesting things that's happened in a while. But hey, I'm not knocking Luol Deng. I'm all for the players getting theirs. I'm not knocking Luol Deng.
Yeah.
So before we
I would have loved to have kept. I'll just start real quick. I would have loved to have kept Malik Monk. I didn't think we were going to be able to keep him anyways. The most we could have paid him was the middle of exception. I'm not mad at him for wanting to go take some extra money, whatever he could get. But yeah, that's the only move I'm pretty disappointed in. I wish we could have found a way to keep him.
so let me ask you this before we go: where does Kevin Durant end up?
I don't know, man, because Kevin Durant apparently thinks that you're supposed to trade him and not get anything back in return. So I think this could drag out for a while.
I think Kevin Durant could possibly end up in Phoenix. first round picks, and if they sign and trade DeAndre Ayton.
We could have him.
I think that, Ayton and maybe what, 4 first round picks? I mean, if you're gonna get 4 for Rudy Gobert, you gotta at least get 4 for Kevin
Yeah.
Durant and then a better player swap.
Yeah. Hey man, I'm just gonna be a homer and just be like, you know what, man, we're trading Anthony Davis and Westbrook, and we're bringing in KD and Irvin to play with LeBron. That's gonna be the new big three in LA. I'm just gonna go the homer route on it. Screw it.
Man, if that happens, I would laugh so hard just because of all the times when KD was throwing like slight shade at LeBron for being that player that would move around. KD done been on about 5 teams now.
Look, we give you our street clothes player for your street clothes player.
But the thing is, if you Durant, he border on street clothes every year. You know what I'm saying? But them games that he do play,
Oh yeah,
you forget about the street clothes. Your
oh
boy
yeah,
Street
yeah.
Clothes Davis, when he play, you remember the street clothes. That's the difference.
I mean, honestly, man, I told you this. Like, I felt like Anthony Davis 2 years ago seemed like he was turning a corner. And when he got injured again, I think mentally he went out there this whole past season and he played scared. He played to not get hurt. And I don't know when athletes gonna start to figure this out, man. When you play not to get hurt, you get hurt. Go out there and play basketball, man. If you're
Yeah,
not
that's
gonna
what you
play,
gotta
then
do.
just retire. You out there
That's very
half
true.
stepping. Yeah. Don't be out there looking like DeAndre Ayton. Come on.
Come on, man. Why you gotta do DeAndre Ayton like that?
Everybody else did to him.
This is fair.
Yeah. I'm just piling on, man. I'm just being part of the crew, man. That's it. But yeah, man. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot more crazy moves. They're going to happen. We're only on day 2 of this, bro. So the splash moves are pretty much coming to an end. You might still see a couple big trades that might happen, obviously. But I think most of the splash signings at this point are kind of dried up. But like we just talked about, a couple months ago with the NFL, this is now where teams start to win the offseason. It's not about the splash moves. It's about how do you fill in your roster? What are the pieces you put around all these stars that you just got? That's what's going to be interesting to watch and see over the next little bit. So, casual fans, the first 2 days, that was for y'all. Real fans, people who really like enjoy seeing the roster get put together, it's about to get fun.
Yeah, that's very true. I will say this: a lot of teams, like you said about Denver, they're not the only one that did it. A lot of teams, while everyone was focusing on this big name player, this star, this big name role player, just kind of made some smooth navigations, dropped some salary cap, brought in some cap relief, guys that are going to be on 1 year deals. So it's going to open up money for Denver to make some other moves if they need to next offseason. You always got to look at the future too. That obviously teams are different places. There are teams that needed those star players, but then you got a team like Brooklyn. What are you going to do? If you're Brooklyn, I think you're trying to find a team that has assets and maybe 1 or 2 tier 2 players that they're willing to move off of Kevin Durant, right? Like I made the example talking to you earlier of Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., and a couple of first round picks. And I'm not saying that they would do that trade, but I'm saying that type of thing where you got 2 guys who they're not top guys, but they're guys who can come in, get the points that Durant got. Gordon's going to upgrade you on defense. You were kind of looking for somebody who has a package like that you're interested in
Yeah.
because it's Kevin Durant. You have to get maximum value if you have to trade Kevin Durant. There's no question about it. The team that you're working with, game recognized game, you got to give up bread to get Kevin Durant. There is no way around that.
So before we sign off, man, Do we have any announcements that we want to give people about the NFL preview? Do we have any
We
idea
do.
when we might be starting that up?
We do. So what we're going to do, good people, is 5 weeks before the NFL season starts. 5 weeks. So in a couple of more weeks, we are going to start covering divisions. We're going to hit them up, the NFC and the AFC version of the divisions. So for instance, what that means is NFC North, AFC North,
Mhm.
AFC South, NFC South. We're going to knock them out like that, two at a time. We're hoping that we're going to have some guests that are going to be able to hop on and help us with that.
Mhm.
More to come on that, hopefully by next week. But I will say this, and I want y'all to really listen to this. Pay attention. Put your eyes to the screen. Make sure you stop watching TV for a minute. You know what I'm saying? Put down your device that you playing your games on while you're watching and listen. This NFL season for the play callers is about to be crazy. Not quite ready to tell you what yet, but you will know real soon. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be fun. You're going to want to tune in.
Hmm. I almost feel like there's a different word we can use. For some reason, madness comes to mind. Oh
Perhaps so.
yeah.
Perhaps so, man. Cup of
that might
coffee.
that might have been a little hint for y'all. You know what I'm saying?
Never know, man. Never know. This guy's full of hints.
A little something for you. Just a little sneak peek into the future. Man, appreciate everybody who joined us tonight, man. Everybody tuning in live, people joined in the comment section. If you haven't already, please go ahead and hit the like button. That lets YouTube know that this is the place to be, and that more people need to see this show. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button, followed by the notification bell, so you never miss a live episode of the Play Calls.
And why would you want to?
Why would you want to? That was a good question.
I thought so. I thought it was a very intelligent question, sir.
Final thoughts, sir.
Final thoughts, man. Things are about to be real, y'all. You know, you got, for those of you who do watch WNBA, you got Major League Baseball, you got football training camps, what, 3, 4 weeks away? So things are about to get real. It's about to be real crazy. Be prepared, be ready, and it's right here, the tag team champs. It's where you want to be. Trust me. Not saying watch other people, but not to watch other people. But Friday nights, 7 p.m., this gonna be the spot. Trust and believe.
Absolutely, man. And trust me, Play Caller Sports Production. Big things coming up. Make sure y'all check out my co-host down here Wednesday nights, 8:30, Eagles Elite Podcast. We got more
You already
surprises for
know.
y'all coming very, very soon. But you gotta stay tuned. Make sure this is the place to be. See y'all back next Friday night, 7 p.m. EST.
And in the words of the homie Ti, big things popping, little things stopping.